One championship coming to the United States. Now, I always like to observe these things, and I always feel that I learn something when I do observe them. I'll tell you, a lot of what I've learned in life, you guys will be able to relate to this, is what not to do. What I thought would work, but my buddy did it instead, and I was surprised at the outcome. I thought that was going to work, but it didn't. You store that away. Very important, right, that you don't touch the same hot stove twice. MMA organizations have popped up and they've gone away. I like to sit back and study it. Now, it's a massive cart before horse. Every single time it's cart before horse. I want a show. I have to get on TV. We go talk to the TV folks. We're not going to put you on TV until we see your show. It's really hard. How are you going to do that? There's a company called Lavazza. I trust that you guys have heard about this. If you guys are coffee folks, and I'm a coffee guy, but I follow this Lavazza. They started off in Europe. How do you get out of Europe? It's not as simple as FedEx and Amazon. It can deliver it absolutely everywhere. It's not a case of that, and people make that mistake all the time. It really doesn't matter how good your product is if people don't know about your product. That is the absolute big mistake that they make. So Lavazza, when they leave Europe, they come to the U.S. They set up their own distribution. They set up their own plants, but they make damn sure that everybody knows about it. I trust that you guys have seen it. You can compare this to the world of infomercials. How do you know if an infomercial is working? It's not the commercial. It's not getting the audience. They're there. People sit back and they watch the infomercial for whatever. But how do you know if it's working? If you see it again. Real simple way to know if that product is getting over or it's time to turn the page, take that loss, and move on to something else. When I look at one championship is going to be asked the same question that every other organization has ever been asked. And they've all attempted to answer it. And it wasn't a great answer. Just what is different about you? And I've heard people really go for that. I was there with something called the IFL, and I don't like to tease the IFL. So people took some efforts and they lost a lot of money. I got to be part of that. I got to be part of the one of the coaches. I don't mean to tease them at all, but it is a massive one where you look at, say, what didn't work? I need to learn from this. And this was a fail, but I've also got to know why it was a fail. And I was there the day the IFL decided they were going to go in a ring, a boxing ring. And they hold an entire event to tell the world that they're going to go in a ring. Now, that is not press conference worthy. If you call a press conference and you get the media to come, you now owe them something that they can write about and get headlines. That's not it. Secondly, when they announced they were going to go in a ring, that was of lesser value to the customer than what the competitor doing, which was going in a cage. Now, these concepts are very obvious. They're very, very obvious, but they thought that was what was going to distinguish them. And I was on the inside. I was a coach, and I had access to these people, and I was telling them, hey, don't do it. It doesn't work in North America. And they would continue to tell me about the Pride organization. Continue to tell me how great the fights were in Pride. But they have identified why. They've identified the fights having more action and being busier in Pride because of the apparatus that they were fighting in, which was a ring. And I went back to my same statement. It doesn't work in North America. I kept offering that example. And at this point, 26-year-old Chael wearing the jersey and hoping to get $100 in per diem each day. I just wasn't in a position where my voice was being respected, but I took a shot at it anyway. And I used examples. It wasn't Chael's opinion. You always get some guy to offer you an opinion. You will see this all the way up to politics, putting somebody else's idea down. Don't put somebody else's idea down unless you're going to offer a different one. And I said to them, guys, Pride has already been here. I was at it. It was at UNLV. It came one time. Pride is massive. Pride is huge. Pride brought their best card. They had everyone off the top of my head from Nick Diaz to Dan Henderson, Vitor Belfort, Vanderlei Silva, and they did not sell out. And it wasn't a branding issue, and it wasn't a lack of fight fans in Las Vegas. In North America, the ring doesn't work. And let me just leave you with one final example. This is what I said to the leadership of the IFL, who dismissed me. So the first person to ever bring a cage is not Dana White. First person to ever bring a cage, named Vince McMahon. And he would charge certain amounts of money to see the same two guys with the same build-up and storyline in front of the same audience do the same thing, but when he put a cage around it, he charged more. There is something spectacular about walking into a room and seeing that cage. And I've been at events, pro wrestling events, way back. There's something called the NWA. This is where Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes got over. When my parents took me to this event, it was awesome. I had so much fun. My first ever live event, but before they go to the main event, which happened to be Ric Flair versus Dusty Rhodes, they take an intermission. They took an intermission because it was a cage match. And they had to come out and they had to set that cage up. And I will just tell you, it was a different feel. Everything was different when you brought in that cage. When I look at one championship, and I use that story to tell you, everybody's going to try to answer that question. Some of them aren't even ready for it. And then when they do have an answer, it's not a good answer. You go look at one championship. Hey, what's different about you guys? How much time do you have? Our production is second to none. And if you want to go look at social media numbers, and numbers don't lie, the part of the world that we have absolutely captivated and we've done nothing but sell out are as big as anybody else wants to offer for their part of the world. Oh, and by the way, we have 3 different offerings. We're putting money, lights, bells, whistles behind competitive grappling. And should I mention, we have the absolute and only the best grapplers alive. We are doing that. And by the way, of course, we're doing MMA. We are first and foremost an MMA organization. As a matter of fact, we happen to be doing it with the one gentleman that people consider the greatest of all time. And you got a few goats. You have a few goats out there, right? George St. Pierre is mine. Khabib is many of yours. Demetrius Johnson's is most people. Between all those goats, only one of them still competing, and they happen to have him. Oh, and should I mention, we also fancy Muay Thai. And should I add to that thought, we only have the absolute best Muay Thai competitors, and we'll put it all in one card. I mean, that's a massive answer. That is a very massive answer, as opposed to a press conference that I personally attended backstage at the Mohegan Sun in, I believe, 2006, when they told people, we're going to do it in a boxing ring. What do you guys like? What kind of fighting do you like, right? It's always been fun, whether you're the fan of this or you're the fan of that, or Rickson Gracie would have. Yes, but Bruce Lee would have. You got them all. They're all right here. Whichever one you want. A disciple of Rickson will be up soon. Somebody that was influenced by Bruce Lee, he's coming up soon. It's one of these situations, and every now and then one will even do what's called a mixed match. They'll have a round of MMA, and they'll go around in kickboxing. I watched it happen. Demetrius Johnson versus Rod. I mean, this stuff is fun. You're going to have fun. That's what you're going to have. One's coming. One is coming to the U.S. Cart before horse. How do I get on TV if I don't have a show? Turns out they had a show. Oh, by the way, turns out they have the TV deal. Like, good things are going to happen at this point. That's going to be in May. I'm going to build up to it. Demetrius is returning to home soil. I think he's going to take on his biggest nemesis. He's 1-1 with Marias. I think that they're going to redo that match. That's a thought for another day. Mark your calendar. And if somebody ever asks you, what's different? What's going to be different about these guys? Ask them in return, how much time do you have?